In my second year as Alexander Pearson's kept woman, I found myself pregnant. Before I could break the news to Alexander, his mother, Scarlett Pearson, got to me first. In the coffee shop, the woman across me wore impeccable makeup and a tailored suit, looking nothing like a woman nearing 50. Scarlett surveyed me with undisguised disdain. So you're Mia, the girl my son keeps in his villa. Her manicured finger tapped the table. Frankly, you're just so-so. I nodded stiffly. Though my relationship with Alexander was an open secret in our circles, having his mother lay it bare still burned my cheeks. A black card hit the table. Name your price to disappear, Scarlett said faintly. I blinked, not replying. It was not because I was humiliated by her, but I was mentally calculating. Was staying with Alexander more profitable, or taking this card? Cat got your tongue, Miss Sullivan? Scarlett's laugh was crystalline, cruel. Don't tell me you actually think this is love? Oh, but you should know. She stirred her latte with deliberate slowness. Alexander's childhood sweetheart returned last week. He's cleared his entire schedule to play tour guide. Our families have agreed. Their marriage is practically a done deal. My heart sank at her words. Alexander had been busy lately, his texts growing sparse. As if to confirm, Scarlett dialed him on speakerphone. The moment the phone was connected, Alexander's cold and pleasant voice came out. Mom? Still shopping with Sophia, darling? Scarlett asked. Alexander replied, yes. A sweet female voice came from the other end of the line. Alexander, carry these for me, my arms are about to fall off. I gripped the spoon tightly. Game over. With Alexander's childhood sweetheart returned, my cushy gig was toast. Not noticing my reaction, Scarlett chatted for a while before contentedly hanging up the phone. Seeing me looking at her silently, Scarlett pressed the card into my palm. Smart girls know when to fold. Here's a card with $3 million. It's enough to live a life of luxury abroad. My breath hitched. $3 million? My monthly allowance was a mere $1 million. Holy hell. If I'd known Alexander's mother was this generous, I'd have been lighting incense for his childhood sweetheart's return daily. I encountered Alexander quite by accident. It was 2 years ago. My stepfather took me to a bar and surreptitiously drugged my drink, with the intention of delivering me to the bed of an elderly male client. By the time I realized something was amiss, I was already burning up all over. Summoning my last vestiges of rationality, I stumbled and pushed open the door of the lounge. There, I beheld Alexander, who was sitting on the couch with his eyes shut, looking utterly at ease. What a strikingly handsome and tall man. In a moment of impulse, I pounced on him. I had been robust since childhood. Taking down 3 men simultaneously was a piece of cake for me. Alexander, accustomed to a life of opulence, stood no chance against me. When I came to my senses, he was already unconscious. Filled with guilt, I left him $100. But as I reached the door, I realized $100 could cover several meals, so I changed my mind. I turned back and swapped the $100 bill for a $50 one. I considered it a tip for him. After all, his performance had been rather lackluster. I thought that was the end of the matter. However, the very next day, I was abducted by a group of men in black and whisked away to a villa. And there, sitting on the sofa, was Alexander. He pinched my chin, his expression cold, and his tone frigid. Remarkable. You're the first woman bold enough to treat me like this. Oh my godness. If only I had known his identity, I wouldn't have never dared to force myself upon him. I cowered on the ground, trembling. I'm terribly sorry. I'm a wretched, shameless fool. You've always been a person of grace and dignity, and I've ruined that. It's all on me. Just pretend it was a stupid mistake, okay? But that wasn't the end of it. Alexander produced that crumpled $50 bill, held it between his fingertips, and coldly inquired, Mia, are you trying to humiliate me? I was so unjustly wronged. With tears welling up, I opened all my bank accounts and showed him my balances one by one. I've already given you 1/10 of my savings. You're a man of great magnanimity, please, just let me go. Alexander's expression softened slightly. Then, he sneered, pathetic. I was seething inside but didn't dare utter a word. His striking eyes lingered on me for a long moment before he suddenly remarked, speaking of which, I happen to be in need of a woman. You'd fit the role perfectly. Goodness, what a classic domineering line. I was about to roll my eyes, but then I realized that I was just a fresh graduate desperately hunting for a job. So, I blurted out, then, boss, does this job come with health insurance and a pension plan? Hearing this, Alexander smiled enigmatically. He averted his gaze and replied in a lazy tone, $1 million a month, all expenses covered, including health insurance and pension. Faced with such an enticing offer, I immediately agreed. I thought, if Snow buries me, I'll close my eyes and sleep forever. Just like that, I became Alexander's kept woman, complete with health insurance and pension. On the night following my negotiation with Scarlett, I returned to the villa. Just as I slipped on my nightgown, a warm body pressed against my back. I was surprised. Alexander had actually returned. There was a faint whiff of perfume on him. There was no doubt that it belonged to his childhood sweetheart. I pushed him, but he didn't budge an inch. Instead, he leaned down. His kisses rained down densely on my neck and gradually trailed lower. The atmosphere grew increasingly charged. But then, thinking of the baby in my womb, I quickly put a stop to it. Alexander paused. To avoid arousing his suspicion, I pointed to the faint dark circles under his eyes and changed the subject. Alexander, you must be tired lately, right? Alexander casually rested his chin on my shoulder, his voice husky and tinged with fatigue. Yeah, I've been swamped recently and haven't had much time to be with you. Just hold on a bit longer. Things will ease up soon. I scoffed inwardly. Sure, he was busy gallivanting around with his childhood sweetheart. I wondered if she even knew he had been keeping another woman on the side. Men. They only behave when they're 6 feet under. Despite cursing him 1,000 times in my head, I looped my arms around his, feigning concern. Come on, go take a shower and get some rest. I'm really worried that one day you'll drop dead from lack of sleep. Alexander's eyes darkened. Will you join me? My ears turned red. This man, with no sense of propriety, was constantly trying to tempt me. Finally, I managed to coax him into the bathroom. I immediately rushed to the kitchen, poured a cup of tea, and slipped a few sleeping pills into it. Worried I might renege on our agreement, Scarlett had booked me an early morning flight. She also warned me not to set foot in the country for 3 years and not to interfere in Alexander's relationship with his childhood sweetheart. Time was running out for me. I had to sneak off to the airport while Alexander was sound asleep. Alexander emerged from the bathroom, towel drying his hair. I quickly plastered on a sweet smile and proffered the cup of tea to him. Alexander didn't take it right away. Instead, he stared at me intently. I felt a flutter of panic under his gaze. Could he somehow see through me? No way. Just as I was on tenterhooks, Alexander slowly took the tea and chuckled. Mia, your stomach seems rounder lately. Are you pregnant? His casual remark hit a nerve. I rushed over and playfully thumped his chest, pouting. It's called curves, okay? You're so clueless. I can't stand you. Don't talk to me until you finish this glass of water. At the same time, I instinctively placed my hand on my abdomen. Don't worry, baby. Mommy will protect you. No one can take away your right to be born. Alexander drained the tea in one gulp. Then, he scooped me up, deposited me on the bed, and wrapped his arms around me from behind. Mia, I can't shake the feeling that you're hiding something from me. I dared not respond, for fear of bursting into laughter. It seems men have a sixth sense too. That's right. Your kept woman is about to make her escape. Before long, a steady rhythm of breathing came from behind me. Once I was certain Alexander was fast asleep, I gingerly wriggled out of his embrace. I retrieved the suitcase I had pre-packed from behind the curtain, and then cast one last look back at Alexander. Even in slumber, his handsome features were captivating. However, we were from different worlds, bound only by money and interest. Farewell, Alexander. 4 years later, I returned home. This time, I was determined to take back everything that was mine. Just kidding. My stepmother was seriously ill, so I came back with my daughter, Lily, to accompany her during her final month. While waiting for my friend to pick me up at the airport, I got so bored that I opened the trending news app. To my surprise, the top story featured a familiar face. Alexander Pearson, Sophia Harrison. Power families unite. Netizens speculate over rumored wedding. A match made in heaven? Pearson heir and Harrison daughter rumored to tie the knot. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, then swiped my finger and began reading other news items with gusto. Good for him. Alexander was finally going to marry his childhood sweetheart. Let me virtually offer my congratulations. After all these years, he couldn't still be petty enough to seek revenge on me, could he? Just as I was lost in thought, Lily came running over, tears streaming down her face, crying, Mommy. I quickly scooped her up in my arms and asked, filled with concern, What's wrong, my dear? Who's been bothering you? Lily pointed at a little boy near the restroom and said indignantly, He splashed water on me and called me an ill-mannered little brat. My eyes darkened. I was about to march over and teach that insolent little boy a lesson when I noticed his disheveled hair and red, swollen eyes. He was yelling and complaining to the man beside him. He looked 100 times more wretched than Lily. I'd almost forgotten that my daughter had inherited my feisty spirit and was a force to be reckoned with. Just as I was about to console Lily, my body froze. That man's profile. Why did it bear such a striking resemblance to Alexander? Surely it can't be such a coincidence, I thought as I quickly put on my sunglasses, mask, and hat. Then I picked up Lily and rushed towards the exit. Lily was confused and kept shouting like a little megaphone, "Mommy, isn't Auntie Lucy here yet? Why are you in such a hurry? Mommy, you haven't punished that mean boy for me yet. Mommy." Unable to take it anymore, I said through gritted teeth, "Honey, lower your voice. Mommy doesn't want to draw attention here." Lily didn't hear me clearly and continued to blink and shout, "Mommy, what did you say?" "Oh well, forget it." I took off running as fast as I could. But I couldn't shake the feeling that a pair of eyes, as sharp as a viper's, were fixed on me. A menacing chill ran down my spine, making my whole body shudder. I held Lily even tighter. I was dressed like a mummy. Surely no one would recognize me, right? After visiting my stepmother in the hospital, my friend Lucy Carter drove Lily and me to an apartment. Sensing my low spirits, Lucy patted me on the shoulder and consoled me. "Come on, everyone has to face life and death. Look at it from a positive perspective. Besides, your mom seems to be in a fairly good condition." Then she continued, "This apartment is currently unoccupied. You and Lily can stay here. A housekeeper will come to clean it every Monday." I looked at her gratefully. "Thank you, Lucy." Lily circled around Lucy and then suddenly hugged her leg and exclaimed, "Auntie Lucy, you're the best. I love you the most." Lucy beamed with delight. She stroked Lily's head and then turned to me. "My sister's kindergarten is hosting an art festival tomorrow afternoon. It's quite close by. Mia, do you want to take Lily to participate? It's said to be great for nurturing a child's artistic sensibilities." Since we had nothing better to do and Lily was a lively child, I agreed right away. The next day, following the location Lucy had sent, I took Lily to the kindergarten. The campus was small, but there were dedicated teachers on hand to offer explanations. Lily, being a social butterfly, quickly mingled with the other children. After ensuring that it was safe enough, I gave Lily a few simple instructions and then headed to the coffee shop across the street to buy a cup of coffee. Just as I finished paying, a strange phone number popped up on my screen. I answered it subconsciously, feeling puzzled. "Hello?" There was no response on the other end, but my right eyelid twitched violently. Just as I was about to hang up, a deep, hoarse male voice came through the receiver. The voice rose at the end, as if forced out through clenched teeth, filled with pent-up resentment. "Found you, Mia." A cold sweat broke out on my back. Without a second thought, I hung up the phone. Why had Alexander suddenly resurfaced? Wait, he was about to get married. Why did he still have the time to care about me? The situation was so urgent that I didn't even bother to pick up my coffee. Instead, I turned around and rushed towards the kindergarten, intent on taking Lily away. However, as soon as I stepped out of the coffee shop, I was immediately surrounded by 6 burly bodyguards in black. The lead bodyguard pointed at a luxury car not far away and nodded politely at me. "Miss, our boss is waiting for you in the car." It was obvious that I stood no chance against so many people. Was it too late for me to call for help? Under the watchful eyes of all the bodyguards, I shuffled slowly towards the luxury car. And then I made a dash for the open space beside it. At the crucial moment, the car door was flung open with force. Alexander, clad in a sharp suit, tall and long-legged, easily grabbed my wrist and yanked me back. He looked down at me, his tone icy. "Run. Let's see where else you think you can run to." At this moment, a line from a novel popped into my head unbidden. She runs, he follows, and even if she had wings, she couldn't escape. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but burst out laughing. Alexander hurled a scathing glare in my direction, and I promptly stifled my laughter. His eyes were icy and menacing as he hissed, "Keep that up. Why'd you suddenly stop?" I stuttered, trying to sound convincing. "You know, I'm just not the type who smiles easily by nature." Alexander's lips twitched in disdain, and he reached out to haul me into the car. Although I couldn't fathom what schemes were brewing in his mind, I was acutely aware that there was a wild card in the kindergarten. If he were to discover Lily's existence, it would spell absolute disaster. With this terrifying thought in my head, I hastily slid into the car. Lucy could come to pick up Lily, but under no circumstances could Lily be allowed to show her face in front of Alexander. Noticing my uncharacteristic compliance, Alexander furrowed his brows suspiciously. Mia, what devious plan are you cooking up this time? Before I could muster a response, the car door was yanked open with a violent jerk. A plastic sword came hurtling towards Alexander, slicing through the air with a whoosh. Simultaneously, Lily's shrill voice rang out, "Bad guy, how dare you bully mommy princess? I, Knight Lily, will vanquish you." Brandishing the sword, Lily wildly slashed at Alexander. After a brief but frenzied assault, the sword snapped, yet Alexander remained unscathed. My heart lodged firmly in my throat. Oh, my dear daughter, why on earth did you dash out here on your own? And those incompetent bodyguards, how could they possibly permit a little girl to open the car door so casually? Fire them, every single one of them. My face drained of color, while Alexander's expression darkened ominously. Realizing she was outmatched, Lily let out a resounding yell and then spun around to flee. "Don't be afraid, mommy princess, I'll go fetch my trusty sidekick to save you." Her words both touched my heart and made me want to chuckle. The lighting had been dim just moments ago, so there was a good chance Alexander hadn't gotten a clear look at Lily's features. Summoning up my courage, I gazed at him and said softly, "Alexander, I'll explain everything that happened before, but could you please let me go for now? As you can see, my daughter is still waiting for me outside." These words seemed to strike a raw nerve in Alexander. He lunged forward, gripped my chin tightly, and ground his teeth. "Mia, you're really something. You went abroad for a few years, and now you've got a daughter this old." At this moment, I was certain that Alexander didn't have the slightest inkling that Lily was his child. Meeting his cold, piercing gaze, I decided to push the envelope and brazenly lied. "Yes, I'm married. Please have some respect for yourself. My husband and I are deeply in love, and our family." Before I could finish my sentence, Alexander yanked me into his arms, his tone laced with aggression. "How do you know I have a penchant for married women?" I was left utterly dumbfounded. Goodness, this guy has some rather unconventional tastes. Just then, the car door swung open once more. Lily stood there, hands on her hips, barking orders at the little boy trailing behind her. "This is the villain who bullied my mommy. Give him a good thrashing." To my surprise, the little boy took a step back and called out sheepishly, "Uncle." Alexander nodded coolly in response. I squinted for a better look and realized that this was the same little boy from the airport a few days ago. Later, I learned that Alexander had been tasked by his cousin to pick up her nephew from school. And by some freakish twist of fate, he'd spotted me on the way. What an unbelievable coincidence. Alexander brought Lily and me to the villa. Years had passed, but the villa's decor remained exactly as it was. Even my former room was untouched. Noticing me surveying the surroundings, Alexander snorted derisively. "The decor hasn't changed because I can't be bothered. Don't go getting any funny ideas, Mia." I was thoroughly perplexed. I hadn't been thinking anything of the sort. Why was he being so defensive? Lily was somewhat resistant to the new environment. She clung tightly to my hand, eyeing Alexander warily, ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. "Bad uncle, you'll never tear me away from my mommy." Alexander fell silent for a brief moment. Clearly, he had no intention of engaging in a squabble with a child. He snapped his fingers, and then a group of young, charming maids wheeled over a cart brimming with mouth-watering desserts, snacks, and toys. They twirled their skirts gracefully and cooed, "Miss Lily, would you like to play house with us? We've set up a delightful afternoon tea in the garden for you." I couldn't help but twitch the corner of my mouth. What a cunning ploy. But it was undeniably effective. Even a precocious girl like Lily couldn't resist the allure. She swallowed hard and looked at me with puppy eyes. I stroked her head gently and whispered, "Go ahead, sweetie." Lily took a few steps, constantly looking back, but her smile was wider than the Cheshire Cat's. She adored playing house. With Lily occupied, Alexander and I could finally have a serious, adult conversation. Even though I had no clue what he was up to, I decided to cut to the chase. "Alexander, you're on the verge of marrying your childhood sweetheart. Let's just put the past behind us. Although I did accept $30 million from your mother before I left." Alexander's eyes widened in shock, and an incredulous look flitted across his handsome face as he interrupted me. "Who told you I'm getting married? Mia, do you think everyone is as heartless as you, jumping from one relationship to the next?" As if he had realized something, he frowned, his eyes darkening menacingly. "Wait a minute, you took $30 million from my mother? What? So he hadn't known about this? Oh, no. Why on earth did I have to bring it up?" Alexander was visibly seething. His jaw clenched tightly, and after a moment, he gave me a cold, calculating smile. "Mia, how do you plan to pay back this $30 million? Suddenly burdened with this astronomical debt, I was shocked. "Alexander, I understand you're angry, but please listen. Your mother gave me that money of her own free will. Alexander shot me a scornful look, his voice slightly hoarse as he retorted, how can you prove it was a voluntary gift? What if you tricked her? Before I could even begin to defend myself, Alexander loomed over me, a taunting smile slowly spreading across his lips. Based on the previous arrangement of 1 million per month, for this 30 million, you'll have to stay with me for at least 2.5 years. Mia, if you're not willing, I won't hesitate to use force. Seriously? Was this guy really going down the path of forced love? I wanted to protest, but Alexander was clearly no longer the naive young man from a few years ago. At this moment, he was the epitome of a domineering, dangerous CEO. He didn't even afford me the luxury of refusing. Seemingly having pressing matters to attend to, he tossed me a curt, be smart and stay put in the villa until I return, and then strode away. Of course, I wasn't about to sit idly by. I immediately dialed Scarlett, convinced that we were on the same side. Sure enough, Scarlett picked up right away. I quickly recounted the situation and pleaded, Scarlett, I'm trapped in the villa by your son. Please send someone to rescue me. To my astonishment, Scarlett let out a weary sigh. Mia, you're so out of touch. There was never any chance between Alexander and Sophia. I was wrong before. I thought they could develop feelings, but in fact, Sophia already has a boyfriend. Anything else? If not, I'm hanging up. Stunned for a moment, I played my trump card. Scarlett, you surely don't want your handsome, wealthy son to be hounded by a nobody like me, do you? Scarlett replied in a calm, resigned tone. The wise avoid love, the foolish repeat their mistakes. I can't control my son anymore. Let him deal with his own consequences. With that, she ended the call. I sat there, gaping in disbelief. What an odd saying. I refused to accept this and persisted in calling Scarlett. After 3 consecutive calls were rejected, I received 2 messages. One read, your bank account has received 10 million yuan. The other stated, is this sum sufficient? Cease pestering me. The first message warmed my heart, while the second sent a shiver down my spine. With a tinge of melancholy, I accessed my bank account balance. Then, I forced a rueful smile. Well, remaining here for a few days wasn't overly burdensome. Certainly, it had not to do with the substantial amount of money. At night, I shared a room with Lily. Likely fatigued from the afternoon's play, Lily promptly drifted off to sleep in my arms. I closed my eyes, yet my slumber was far from peaceful. In my dream, I was dashing about with Lily, attempting to hide, when a menacing-looking beast apprehended us. It snatched Lily away and then unceremoniously kicked me aside. I wailed in despair, no. Return my daughter to me. The beast sneered malevolently and declared, Mia, think about who I am and where you stand. There's an ocean between our worlds. Now that I'm tired of you, I can cast you aside whenever I please. I'm taking our daughter. From now on, there'll be no Lily Sullivan in this world, only Lily Pearson. The beast's visage gradually morphed into Alexander's, and I jolted awake with a start. Feeling the soft and fragrant bundle in my arms, I heaved a profound sigh of relief. Thankfully, Lily was still there. I gazed at her slumbering visage for a while. Unable to fall back asleep, I resolved to descend the stairs to fetch a glass of water. However, the moment I reached the stairwell, the lights in the living room abruptly flared to life. The butler was assisting a flushed-faced Alexander into the room. Upon spotting me, he seemed to have found a lifeline. Mr. Pearson had too much to drink. He's been calling your name the whole way back. He won't let any of us near him. Do you think you could help him to his room? I'll go make some tea to sober him up. Initially, I had no inclination to help. But upon beholding the butler's distressed mien, I immediately empathized with him. Thus, I nodded. The instant I made contact with him, Alexander, who had been struggling ceaselessly, became astonishingly placid and obediently draped his arm around me. The butler wore a relieved smile, yet then my neck suddenly felt a heavy weight, and I nearly lost my footing. Goodness, he was incredibly hefty. With great exertion, I finally managed to transfer Alexander to the bed. I was gasping for breath. Looking down, Alexander was reclining on the bed with his eyes shut, appearing quite comfortable. Recollecting the dream I had just experienced, I sneered and surreptitiously pinched his arm. Perhaps I applied too much force, for Alexander emitted a muffled groan and opened his eyes. Panicking, I hastily feigned concern and inquired, Alexander, are you okay? Would you like to take a bath first? Alexander nodded obediently. I accompanied him to the bathroom and said, you take a bath first. I'll await you outside. After closing the door, I seated myself on the bed and listened intently to the sounds within the bathroom, fearing that he might suddenly collapse. Just then, there was a knock at the door. The butler had arrived with the tea. I accepted the tea and had just closed the door when a powerful force suddenly grasped my waist. Turning around, I beheld Alexander, his body steaming, his raven black hair still dripping wet, evidently having just emerged from the shower. He was clad solely in a towel around his waist, and his robust chest was pressed firmly against my back. The scene was rather striking. I heard his deep and aggrieved voice. "Mia, are you trying to flee once more?" I was too preoccupied with steadying the tea in my hand to respond. Fortunately, it narrowly avoided spilling all over my face. Not receiving a reply from me, Alexander embraced me tightly in his arms, his tone desperate and suppressed. 4 years ago, you dumped me without hesitation for the sake of money. So, why have you returned? Mia, you surely don't think I'm so pathetic as to still harbor feelings for you, do you? Absolutely impossible. Now you hold no allure for me whatsoever. Why aren't you speaking? Mia, say something. Let me ask you, what were you doing on all those nights when I was heartbroken and drinking myself into a stupor? Were you carousing with other men? Forget it, I don't want to hear it. After all, I've remained celibate for these 4 years, while your daughter is already over 3 years old. I'll never engage in a jovial chat with you again because I've shed all my tears in these 4 years. I was left stunned, uncertain whether to offer him the tea. Alexander, however, remained ensconced in his own world. He lowered his eyes, and his voice choked with emotion. All these years, you've been raising Lily on your own. It must have been so hard, especially for someone as delicate as you. I told you, those men out there are all unreliable, solely after your money and body. Only someone as trusting as you would fall for it. Lily takes after you, so clever and full of spirit. She's exactly the kind of talent the Pearson family would nurture. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Lily should change her last name. Honestly, I've got a line of admirers stretching all the way to France. It's not like I'm dying to be her dad. Fine, I'll admit it, I'm upset. The thought of such an amazing wife not being mine, and such a wonderful daughter not being mine, makes me want to jump off the roof. His remark hit like a cannon. As he became increasingly incoherent, I raised my sore hand and reminded him, the tea is growing cold. Only then did Alexander notice the sobering tea in my hand. He immediately fell silent. And I, still reeling from his words, had no idea what to say. Alexander encircled my waist and murmured, "Mia, I'm never drinking anything you give me again." Recollecting that cup of tea from a few years ago, I cleared my throat and said unconvincingly, "This one's completely clean, I swear. No tricks this time." He gave me a skeptical look and said, "Then you take a sip first." Without hesitation, I lowered my head and took a sip. The next second, his slender fingers gripped my chin. Alexander leaned down, his cool lips brushing against the corner of my mouth. As our lips met, his crisp, clean scent enveloped me completely. In that hazy moment, my mind went blank, dizzy from the intensity of the kiss. The sobering tea in my hand was set aside by him. In its place, our fingers intertwined tightly. I wasn't sure how things had escalated from drinking tea to this situation. I opened my eyes, trying to hold on to the last shred of rationality. "Alexander, wait, I don't want to." Alexander gently guided my hand, placing it against his sculpted abs, his fingers brushing over mine in a slow, deliberate motion. His eyes were clouded with desire, his warm breath brushing against my ear, carrying a seductive edge. "Mia, are you sure you don't want to?" With his irresistible charm right in front of me, I was completely swept away, unable to utter another word of refusal. I didn't know how much time had passed. Suddenly, I felt something wet on my neck, like heavy teardrops falling. Lost in the haze of passion, I heard Alexander's soft, pleading voice. "Mia, don't leave me again, okay? I'd lose my mind." The aftermath of a passionate night was that when I awoke the next day, my entire body ached. As soon as I opened the door, I heard a burst of laughter. Looking up, I saw Alexander in the living room, engaged in building blocks with Lily. He said something that made Lily burst into laughter. Lily, being sharp-eyed, immediately noticed my presence. She pushed aside the building blocks and rushed straight towards me, shouting, "Mommy!" I caught her in my arms and twirled her around in the air. Alexander also rose to his feet. A glimmer of tenderness flickered in his eyes as he said softly, "Lily wants to visit the amusement park. Mia, you go have breakfast first. Then we'll take her there after you're finished." Unlike his sophisticated attire when we first met yesterday, at this moment, Alexander was attired in casual home clothes, looking every bit the doting husband and father. gazing at my adorable little daughter in my arms. I had a peculiar sense of having a warm family with a loving husband and child. But to be candid, I didn't know how to confront my current relationship with Alexander. Recollecting the nightmare I had last night, I stood still and said euphemistically, "It's all right. You go ahead and attend to your work first. I'll take care of Lily." Upon hearing this, Alexander lowered his long eyelashes, and his expression turned cold. "You think I was dissembling about what I said yesterday, don't you? Work can be deferred. In my heart, Lily's wishes are of paramount importance." I pursed my lips. Just as the atmosphere was on the verge of turning tense, Lily whispered in my ear, "Mommy, let him come along. Then we'll have a photographer to carry our bags and perform odd jobs." As she spoke, a mischievous smile spread across her face. I helplessly ruffled her hair and acquiesced. Alexander's eyes brightened. As soon as we entered the amusement park, Lily couldn't wait to board the roller coaster. She had been bold since childhood and adored these thrilling rides the most. Although I was somewhat afraid of heights, I didn't want to dampen the mood, so I agreed. Noticing my unease, Alexander cast a glance at me and said calmly, "If you're frightened, just shout. It's quite all right." I feigned composure and said, "Have you forgotten? I'm rather brave." Alexander offered a lazy smile, neither concurring nor objecting. As the roller coaster commenced its movement, Lily laughed exuberantly, while I shut my eyes tightly, attempting to empty my mind. Finally, when the roller coaster hurtled downward, I couldn't contain myself any longer and let out a piercing scream. Alexander, on the other hand, chuckled. How dare he laugh at me? A surge of anger welled up within me, and I pinched his arm several times, leaving marks. Upon seeing the red marks on Alexander's arm, Lily inquired curiously, "Uncle, were you bitten by a mosquito?" Alexander cast a sidelong glance at me, and the corner of his mouth curved up. "Yes. It's so persistent and fierce that I can't shake it off." Recalling my childish behavior just now, I lowered my head in embarrassment. When I looked up again, I discovered that Lily had already dragged Alexander to the queue for the haunted house. Goodness. Lily blew me a kiss and then winked playfully. "Mommy, if you're scared, you can wait for me outside, okay?" Alexander, shouldering her small backpack, chimed in, "How could that be? Your mommy is the bravest." Sensing his schadenfreude, I couldn't help but clench my fists. A woman should never admit defeat. After all, it's just a haunted house. What's there to be afraid of? With this thought in mind, I rushed into the haunted house and came face to face with a long-haired, blood-smeared Sadako. Scared out of my wits, I turned around and fled, leaping onto Alexander in a few strides and clinging tightly to his neck. After screaming for a while, I opened my eyes and saw Lily holding a plastic stick she'd picked up from who knows where, chasing Sadako around the room. "Don't run, come play with me," Lily said excitedly. Seeing this, Alexander raised an eyebrow. "Lily's personality is really nothing like yours." Feeling a bit embarrassed, I jumped off him and walked away with a huff. But before I'd taken more than a few steps, a deathly pale zombie suddenly jumped out in front of me. I shrieked and threw myself into Alexander's arms again. "Darn lovebirds," the zombie muttered and then hopped away. I looked at Alexander with a scowl. "Hey, why aren't you scared at all?" Alexander looked down at me, his tone nonchalant. "If I'm scared, how can I protect you?" At his words, my heart skipped a beat. Then, I felt a sudden lightness as my vision spun. Alexander held me firmly in his arms, his eyes dark. "If you're scared, close your eyes. I'll carry you out." After a moment's hesitation, I obediently pressed my cheek against his chest. I had to admit that this did make me feel much more at ease. By the end of the day, we'd almost tried every ride in the amusement park. I noticed that Alexander really doted on Lily, indulging her in everything. And Lily was running wild, her smile never fading. While Alexander was off buying ice cream, I crouched down and asked Lily seriously, "Honey, do you like Uncle Alexander?" Lily took a bite of her marshmallow and nodded. "Yes." I bit my lip, my voice a bit dry. "Then, would you like it if he became your daddy?" Lily shook her head and hugged my neck firmly. "I only need mommy." I ruffled her face, half joking. "Really? Didn't you just say you liked him a lot?" Hearing this, Lily quickly finished her marshmallow and wiped her mouth with a handkerchief. She looked around warily and then took out a black card from her overalls and handed it to me. "Mommy, I know you love money very much, and Uncle Alexander is rich and kind of dumb. He's a rare find. Look, I just sweet-talked him a bit, and he gave me a black card. I'm going to use the money in it to buy mommy a big house." Looking at the black card in my hand, I felt amused and a bit exasperated. I thought Lily had been so easily bought by her real dad. Turns out she was a little schemer with lots of tricks up her sleeve. Lily grinned and asked, "So, do you like Uncle Alexander?" I felt a bit shy and replied coyly, "Honey, why do you ask?" "Mommy, you look at him in a special way. Little Detective Lily sees everything." Lily made a cool gesture of putting on a hat and added, "If you like Uncle Alexander, be brave and give it a shot." Before I could say anything, she threw herself into my arms and cooed, "But Mommy, you have to love Lily the most. I like Uncle Alexander only if you like him. If you like him more than me, I won't like him anymore. I'll put him on Assassin Lily's hit list." My heart melted. How could my daughter be so smart and cute? Just then, Lily waved at someone not far away and shouted, "Uncle Alexander, we're over here." I looked up and saw Alexander, carrying a small backpack, a teddy bear, and a balloon in one hand, and 2 ice creams in the other. The sunlight shone on his handsome profile, as if casting a soft golden glow, making it hard to look away. Alexander trotted over and handed the ice creams to Lily and me. He urged us to eat quickly before they melted. He was so natural, as if we were a perfectly ordinary family of 3. The moment our eyes met, my cheeks heated up uncontrollably. So, I averted my gaze and pretended to look at the scenery. The next day, I went to the hospital again. My stepmother was very happy to see Lily and me. She sat up with effort and talked to us for a long time. To amuse my stepmother, Lily showed her a lot of photos on her phone. "Grandma, this is a photo of me and Mommy skiing. Skiing is so much fun, and this is a photo of Mommy teaching me to swim." My stepmother nodded and smiled affectionately. "Oh, seeing that you two are doing well makes me feel at ease." When they came to the group photo taken at the amusement park yesterday, my stepmother squinted and pointed at Alexander in the photo. "This young man looks familiar." I was a bit surprised. "Mom, have you met him?" To keep my stepmother from worrying, I'd told her I worked as an accountant in a company and went abroad for overseas trade. My stepmother recalled, "At that time, I'd just divorced your stepfather, but he still came to ask me for money from time to time. I didn't tell you because I was afraid you'd worry. Once, he was drunk and came to smash things at home again. This young man happened to pass by and knocked him out. Since then, he's never bothered me again." He my stepmother mentioned was my scumbag stepfather, Jack Sullivan. I was an orphan and was adopted by this couple when I was 8. At first, the family was happy, but soon, Jack got addicted to gambling and started abusing me and my stepmother. My stepmother was too weak-willed to fight back. After I was sent to the hospital for the 4th time because of Jack, my stepmother finally summoned the courage to divorce him. Jack refused, so my stepmother took me to a new place and filed for divorce. I thought he'd given up because he couldn't find us. Unexpectedly, it was Alexander who had investigated my background and helped me deal with that scumbag. My stepmother continued, "Remember a year ago when I fell? It was this young man who took me to the hospital and found a nurse for me. I wanted to pay him, but he refused." Hearing this, I gasped in surprise. Due to the time difference and distance, although I often called my stepmother to care about her, I was ultimately limited in what I could do. I thought my stepmother had met a kind-hearted person. I never expected it was Alexander who had been quietly taking care of my family. Seeing my changing expressions, my stepmother probed, "Mia, is this young man your boyfriend?" She glanced at Lily, who was playing Candy Crush, and lowered her voice. "I think he and Lily look a bit alike. Tell me the truth, is he Lily's biological father?" I hesitated, not knowing how to describe this complicated relationship. My stepmother sighed, "Mia, I understand. Because of that man's cruelty and my own inability to protect you, you've always kept people at arm's length since you were young. That's why, even though you've never lacked admirers, you've never let yourself believe in love or marriage. Not after everything you've been through. As your mother, I truly hope you can find a way to move past the pain and open your heart to the possibility of a new family. But no matter what you decide in the end, I'll stand by you. Mia, all I want is for you and Lily to be happy." I burst into tears. She was right. I really didn't believe in love. I only believed in money. So, even though Alexander treated me well, when I found out he might be entering into an arranged marriage, I walked away without hesitation. The gap between our worlds gave me too many reasons to doubt. And the scars from my childhood had turned me into someone who avoided emotional attachment at all costs. I didn't dare to bet on a man's conscience with my feelings, especially not a man with power and influence. When I found out I was pregnant, my first reaction was sheer panic. I thought about ending the pregnancy. But then, I remembered the cruel words my stepfather once said to me. "A worthless girl like you should have been aborted in the first place." My childhood was so hard. Why couldn't my child have a chance at a better life? After meeting Scarlett, I became even more determined in this decision. I had money, looks, and Alexander was, objectively, a great genetic candidate. Our child was bound to have good genes. Since I was pregnant, I saw it as fate bringing this child into my life. I decided to keep the baby and raise her on my own. And true enough, after Lily was born, she brought so much joy into my life. Once, she sat in the grass with her toy gun, calling out to me in her soft voice, "Mommy, come here for a second." Thinking she wasn't feeling well, I rushed over in a hurry and asked, "What's wrong, baby? Do you feel sick anywhere?" To my surprise, Lily wrapped her arms around my neck, kissed me several times, and cooed, "I'm fine. I just wanted to kiss Mommy." My eyes turned red, and I thought to myself, I'm so incredibly happy. My daughter had never been a burden to me. She was my salvation, my everything. I poured all my energy into fulfilling Lily's every need, as if I were making up for the childhood I never had. When I reunited with Alexander, I was extremely afraid that he would discover the truth and take Lily away from me. But after spending these past few days together, I could feel myself wavering. Alexander, he really seemed to love me. Even without knowing Lily was his own daughter, he treated her as if she were his. And it didn't seem like an act. So, should I try to respond to his feelings? We had already missed out on so many years, and I didn't want to miss Alexander again. When I brought Lily back to the villa, she had already fallen asleep. Her little face was pink and extremely cute. I carefully placed her on the bed and gently closed the door. As I passed by the study, voices of conversation came from inside. The door was ajar, and when I looked up, I saw the family doctor examining Alexander's body. "Do you still suffer from insomnia? I remember not long ago, you had to rely on medication to fall asleep." "Occasionally. The butler said you often have stomach aches. I've prescribed you some medicine. You must eat and take the medicine on time." "Okay. Then, do you still have headaches?" "Much better." The more I listened, the more alarmed I became. What on earth had Alexander gone through during the years I was away? How could he develop so many health problems at such a young age? As the doctor continued, her expression grew increasingly serious. "Mr. Pearson, we've known each other for many years now. If I may be bold, has Miss Sullivan returned?" Alexander gave a low, quiet, yes. The doctor heaved a heavy sigh. "Ever since Miss Sullivan came back, your health has improved. Ultimately, I think the illness you need to treat the most is not a physical one but a mental one. Do your best to win her over. Make her want to stay by your side. She is the only cure that can truly heal you." The doctor gave a whole bunch of suggestions before picking up the medicine box and preparing to leave. Then she and I stared at each other, both frozen in place for a moment. She greeted me politely and quickly left. I pushed the door open and entered. Alexander was taken aback. He pursed his lips tightly and said with some chagrin, "Mia, how much of that did you hear?" "Everything." I sat on the desk, tilted my head to look at him, and said with a frown, "Is this how you took care of yourself after I left?" Alexander turned his head away, his voice cold and deep. "You don't understand." He sniffled, his tone resentful. "The day you disappeared, I searched every corner of the city, but I couldn't find you no matter how hard I tried. Later, I found out you'd gone abroad, somewhere I couldn't reach you. At that point, I felt completely broken. I thought, if she's already abandoned me, what does it matter if my health fails? No one cares anyway." I gently touched Alexander's handsome face, my voice softening. "That's not true. Your health is everything. Look, you eventually did go to the doctor, didn't you?" Suddenly, Alexander grabbed my wrist and pulled me into his arms. His warm breath brushed against the top of my head, and he said through gritted teeth, "Every month, I spread rumors that I was seriously ill, just to lure you back home. But you never came to see me, not once. Mia, you're so heartless." Eventually, I realized, instead of waiting for you to have a change of heart, I'd better take care of my health and secure control of my family as quickly as possible. That way, even if you flew to Antarctica, you wouldn't be able to escape me. It seemed that someone had sent me text messages saying Alexander was seriously ill. But that person sent me the same message every few days, and it looked like a scam. I was pretty sharp when it came to spotting fraud, so I immediately blocked the number. But I didn't dare tell Alexander that. He'd be furious again if he found out. To calm things down, I decided to give him a little surprise, so I gently prompted, "Alexander, don't you think Lily looks a bit like you?" A hint of confusion flashed across Alexander's eyes. Then, as if he had thought of something, his eyes widened. Under my expectant gaze, he said slowly, "You missed me so much while you were abroad that you found a lookalike and had Lily with him? What a waste." His imagination was fit for a screenwriter. After a moment of silence, I said, usually, you seem so smart. Why do you always act so clueless when it comes to love? Thank goodness our daughter doesn't take after you. No hopeless romantic here. Finally, it clicked for Alexander. He stared at me intently, his eyes darkening with emotion. Are you saying Lily is our daughter? Mine and yours? I nodded seriously. Alexander's breathing grew rapid. His deep, dark eyes burned so intensely that I couldn't hold his gaze. I closed my eyes, ready for a tender kiss. But after waiting for what felt like forever, all I heard was his muttered realization. So, the other man is actually me. I couldn't hold back anymore and said softly in his ear, silly Alexander, what are you waiting for? Kiss me. Okay, Alexander replied in a hoarse voice and placed a kiss on my lips. He looked up at me, his expression soft, his gaze intense and full of affection, as if I were a precious, fragile treasure. My heart raced uncontrollably. Mia, I don't ask for anything else. I just want you to stay by my side. Alexander took my hand and gently placed it against his cheek, his touch light yet firm. Only when you look at me do I feel alive. You've never been my mistress. You're my everything. Mia, I'll always love you, Alexander said solemnly, his eyes turning red. I cupped his face and leaned down to kiss away his tears. Then, with all the sincerity in my heart, I made him a promise. Alexander, I love you too. Life is full of missed chances and regrets. Fortunately, this time, I've seen through my own heart in advance. The most important thing is for our family of 3 to live a good life. After all, the future is still long, isn't it?